The UK is now a police state. A police state where dissidents of Keir Starmer, even if they are harmless housewives grieving over the loss of their own baby, get punished. Because what else can excuse the truly ludicrous and sickening 31 months in prison? Yes, that's 2.5 years. 2.5 years for Lucy Connolly, the wife of the Conservative West Northamptonshire councillor Raymond Connolly. Now, I've kept in touch with Raymond throughout this process, and in fact, I've heard from him in the past few minutes. Raymond says this verdict, this sentencing, is very raw. He says that there's been incredible support, that Lucy is being looked after by the other women in prison. He's been remanded in prison, remember, since her arrest. And that he's going to have to play mum and dad for quite a while longer. Now, Raymond was praying sense would prevail at today's sentencing in Birmingham. That hasn't happened. But I think it's important I show you what he has previously said of his wife, who, remember, deleted her ex-post soon after making it in the horror of hearing about 3 young girls stabbed to death in Southport at the Taylor Swift dance class. And I do need to remind you that the reason this hit home with Lucy is because she lost her own baby at just 19 months as a result of NHS neglect. Here's what Raymond said.
These last few months have been quite traumatic for Lucy and the children. The stuff I hear on the TV is not really Lucy. She's probably the opposite of what she's having to admit to, but she knows that she's overstepped the mark and there's consequences for it. So hopefully she'll be able to learn from this and move on with her life.
What she said about it to you now, reflecting on obviously what happened?
It's just a moment of, you know, an upset housewife really, just seeing children in the reports with all the misinformation, and just got dragged into it, and obviously she regrets it. She did a couple of hours after she put the link up, but obviously it came back on a week or so later, and then obviously underneath it, and her husband's a Tory councillor, and here we are today.
Here we are today. His wife has just been locked up for 2.5 years, Lucy Connolly. And obviously this is a breaking story. I have just at this moment been sent the defence sentencing note that was used today in court to try and present the mitigating features as to why Lucy shouldn't have been locked up. And I think it's important that I run through them with you. She has a lack of previous convictions. She has a positive, good character, caring for other people's children. There is no evidence that she did not perform her duties in this role properly with care. Remorse. She had remorse for what she did, and that was the view of the probation officer in the pre-sentence report. She is the primary carer for her 12-year-old daughter. And then they talk about the personal mitigation. In the horrendous way Lucy Connolly lost her son, and the effect of not only the loss of her son, but the way she lost her son. And remember, her son was incredibly young when he died as a result of NHS neglect. They also say that one of the mitigating factors was the difficult condition with prison overcrowding, especially given that this is Mrs. Connolly's first experience of custody. So, Lucy's 12-year-old daughter without her mother for up to 2.5 years. And I say anyone who thinks that Lucy should be locked up when violent men who attack women at petrol stations for not dressing conservatively enough or when people like Hugh Edwards receive no custodial sentence for making child pornography, well, I think if they still think Lucy Connolly should be behind bars for such an extraordinary long sentence, then they have truly lost the plot. But the sick and twisted authorities are having to come for women like Lucy, one of just 400 so-called rioters or social media criminals who are being locked up. And they're doing it because their far-right bogeyman is nothing more than a figment of the imagination. Sly News had to admit as much this week.
Sky News has, for the first time, uncovered and mapped the networks on Telegram, the encrypted messaging app where the flames were fanned and the riots were organised. We've been working with Pros, an open-source intelligence startup which has a deep penetration of far-right and conspiracist networks on Telegram, to find out who is behind the messaging.
One interesting thing we can see here, especially considering this is the first day, is that the source of most of the information that people are talking about on Telegram isn't British English language communities.
And the most widely shared content on Telegram during the initial 3 days of the unrest was primarily authored by non-domestic accounts from the USA and Europe.
And as Richard Tice, the deputy leader of Reform UK, posted on X after I had pointed out that report, summer riots were whipped up by foreign agitators. Even Sky News now admits apologies, please, from lefty loons. Now, Lucy Connolly made a mistake with her post on X. Yeah, it was vile. I'm not actually trying to defend what she said. She admitted it. She deleted it. She said something in anger. But she is a political prisoner, made an example of by Two-Tier Care and the MSM. And I think we have to think of the slippery slope that such a sentence creates. Because what Starmer is trying to do here is terrify his critics into silence. And for the moment, it may have worked. But I think the dam will burst soon enough. And I am absolutely delighted today to be joined by Dr. Alka Sehgal-Cuthbert. She is the director of Don't Divide Us, as well as an educator, academic, author, and campaigner. I heard her speak very recently at the 3rd anniversary of the Together Declaration and was incredibly impressed. She believes passionately in the essential importance of impartiality in education and this is the important thing, as a prerequisite for the civilized conversations necessary for democracy to flourish. So Dr. Alka, so great to have you on the show. I absolutely love what you're doing with Don't Divide Us. But actually, it's the most important day for you to be here, really, because we see Lucy Connolly jailed for 2.5 years, a housewife. Now, based on what you say, I think you would agree that her post on X was definitely not a civilized conversation. It was a post that was made in a lot of anger, in the heat of the moment after what happened at the Southport community with the slaughtering of the 3 young girls at the Taylor Swift dance class. But how do you feel about her being put behind bars for 2.5 years when she's a housewife with no previous convictions, a carer to her 12-year-old daughter, and at the same time, we see so many hardened criminals on the streets?
Well, thank you, Dan. Thank you for your kind words and for inviting me. I think it's wrong. It's I think imprisoning, putting people behind bars, criminalising hate, online hate, and she's not the only one. There have been many others as well. It's kind of fundamentally flawed, really, because feeling hate is part of being human. So like you, I don't particularly like. Well, in fact, no, more than that. I really dislike what she said. I don't agree with it. I think it's pretty disgusting. But the thing is, here's the thing about being part of a civilized country or a civilized way of governing things, is that we can tolerate what we hate, right?
Yes.
We do not. Our response to what we don't like is a civilized response to say exactly what we're saying now, but to say it is not criminal, right? It was not incitement. It nowhere met the bar, which is a different set of laws.
Yes. She wasn't directly saying, go to this address, here's the name of the person, kill this person. She was using very inartful wording to express her anger about the situation.
Well, I mean, the thing is, Dan, is that, we've seen about 200 odd, I think, arrests very swiftly ensuing from the riots. They've been
400 now. 400 jailed.
Really? Well, I think, last I had a quick peek at the kind of I thought rather nasty films that the police were putting out, kind of reminded me of sort of show trials. Meanwhile, the 4 people from Manchester Airport who didn't just say hateful things, they kind of, knocked police women to the ground, are out on bail, right? So,
well, they actually haven't even been arrested yet. That's the extraordinary thing.
I know. I mean, we all understand that, we want due justice to be done. There are procedures to be followed, but come on, at least let us know exactly what state of play is. All we know is that they're out, they're out on bail.
Well, it's two-tier justice, isn't it? And it really makes me think hard. And this is why I love the name of your organisation, Don't Divide Us. Because isn't the problem, Alka, that race divisions are now being weaponized to the point where actually it's starting to encourage racism that wasn't there?
I really think so. I think we're seeing the re-racialization of our culture and our society. We're seeing it in schools. We're seeing, I've had at least 2 people this week contact me saying they're very puzzled, upset, and annoyed that their children's schools are organising racially segregated events. Right? What's that about?
So what? So if you're white, you can't go, or is it specifically for black students or Asian students? What? How does that work?
I mean, I don't know the details, but what has happened in one of the places is that there is an outing being arranged for the school, but it's only available to ethnic minority.
So it's like these blackout performances where white people are
discouraged
from attending.
All, justified under the rubric of, safe spaces, giving space for people. But these are children, and that is racial thinking, and it's racism, right? It's simply not. You would think of in schools of all places with young children, that is a particularly pernicious thing to be doing, because you're saying right from the get-go, you can't actually form the bonds with your fellow people online, due to what you are, your character, your personality, what you say, what you do, how you treat people. But all of that has got to be first and foremost seen through your skin color. I mean, that to me, that's racism. That's racist thinking.
It really is. It really, really is. But first, it is the best time of year, right, guys? Football is back. We're talking Premier League in the UK and in the US, NFL Sundays and college football Saturdays. With that comes the glorious grind of fantasy football lineups where your inner manager comes alive, setting the perfect fantasy roster, screaming at your TV and making last-minute waiver moves that either make you the hero or the guy on the bench that everyone ridicules in the group chat. But listen, while you're over here making sure your fantasy team is dialed in, don't let your personal grooming become the guy that gets left on the bench, because let's be honest, no one wants to fumble their grooming routine. So this is where Manscape's Performance Package 5.0 Ultra comes in, acting as your all-in-one grooming playbook. From keeping things sharp down below with the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra to taking care of those rogue ear and nose hairs with the Weed Whacker 2.0, this is the lineup that'll keep you looking and feeling like a champ on and off the field. It will make you feel clean, confident, and ready to dominate your fantasy league. The Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra Groin and Body Hair Trimmer is the franchise player of your grooming roster with precise trimming capabilities. It's efficient, reliable, and gets the job done without fumbling. Whether it's for date night, a weekend tailgate, or just everyday grooming, this is the tool you want on your squad. Now, no one wants a surprise nose or ear hair making a guest appearance on game day, do they? So the Weed Whacker 2.0 handles those details like a pro, keeping you neat and ready to go. No missed tackles in your grooming game. The Performance Package 5.0 Ultra also comes with 2 free gifts today: the Boxers 2.0 Midnight Bravo and the Shed 2.0 Toiletry Bag, premium gear to ensure you're always ready for action, whether at home or on the road. So join the over 10 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped and get ready for kickoff by heading over to manscaped.com. That's www.manscaped.com. Use the code OUTSPOKEN and you'll get 20% off your entire order and free shipping. Trust me, you'll be drafting the real MVP of grooming this season. So 20% off and free shipping if you enter Outspoken as the code at checkout at manscaped.com. Stay on top of your grooming game and be ready for anything the season throws your way. And I'm delighted to be joined today by Yusuf Sadani. He is a contributor to Reasoned UK who has launched his own YouTube channel, which I will be putting in the show notes. Yusuf, so great to have you on Outspoken for the first time. Your reaction to Lucy Connolly receiving a 2.5-year prison sentence for an ex-post.
Well, thank you, Dan, for having me on your show. I just want to say that I am so tired of this Labour government already, because they are going
Yes.
after people that speak about the problems rather than the problems themselves. And slowly but surely, we are heading to a tyrannical state where people are being jailed and thrown in prison because of an opinion. So one of the pillars of a free democratic society is the fact that we have freedom of speech. We can express ourselves freely, even though we might not agree with each other. And, you know, freedom of speech only applies when someone says something you don't like. All right, you know, the wording she used is not probably the best, and I don't necessarily agree with her 100%, but she should not be in jail for 2.5 years, because as you said, there are people that work for the BBC that have child pornography on their phone and they walk away freely. And we also have a lot of, you know, machete gangs and a lot of Islamists in the streets that set buses on fire carrying machetes. Where is the justice for them? And it just seems to me, you know, it's two-tier policing, and soon, if we go down this rabbit hole, we're going to end up in a very dark place, because, you know, tyrants don't come and take control of everything straight away. It's these incremental steps towards tyranny. And, you know, I'm Iranian myself, so I have seen this happen after the revolution in 1979, where the government slowly but surely was taking back control of people. I know at first it was like, oh, well, women don't have to wear the hijab. And then after a year, they were like, no, women have to wear the hijab. And then they started enforcing it. And now, you know, women die in Iran if they don't wear the hijab because they get stopped by the morality police. And that's what you saw in the Mahsa Amini protests. So I just hope the Labour government will implode soon, because their, you know, approval ratings is tanking. And I hope soon we can move away, because they have 2/3 majority seats, and I just don't understand how you can get 1/3 of the votes but 2/3 of the majority. So, but they're imploding very fast. The Keir Starmer's approval ratings is, you know, going to the minuses now, and sure, hopefully I can see reform maybe, or, you know, the Conservatives have a leadership battle right now, but I'm a reform supporter. I used to be a Conservative actually, but I'm reform now,
like a lot
and
of
I
people.
hope that yeah, exactly. And I actually was working with reform on communication strategy during the elections, and
you did very well.
you know, I think, you know, reform is what we need in this country right now.
I agree with that, and I do want to talk about the political situation in just a second, Yusuf. But can we just for 1 second longer concentrate on this sentence? Because isn't it particularly shocking when you look at the priorities of who the government wants to lock up? And number one, we're actually meant to have a judiciary that is free of political interference. Well, Keir Starmer blew that out of the water over the so-called riots. He made it abundantly clear, did he not, that he was going to weaponize his experience as the former director of public prosecutions. So that's the first thing. But how can we, as a society, say, actually sort of look our kids in the eyes when we say you can go to jail for posting on X, but you will not go to jail for making child pornography? You will not go to jail as a man for beating up a woman at a police station because she wasn't in Muslim dress. That is, I mean, does that not represent the breakdown of a society?
It does, and I think it's the woke mind virus that is taking over the West. You know, we're trying to be politically politically correct to the point of no return and to the point of harm. Look, sometimes certain things need to be said. I am quite famous for questioning Islam and, you know, the Islamist, the rise of Islamism. You know, I'm ex-Muslim. I come from a Muslim background, but I don't agree with Islam because I feel like there are certain parts of Islam that are deeply dangerous and they have no part in Western civilization or any civilization for that matter. And now we have the Labour government trying to outlaw or call it Islamophobia, the Islamophobia bill. And I actually made a video for Reason, which actually done very well. It got close to 500,000 views, where I actually open the Quran and go through the verses that are deeply problematic. And I was asking Keir Starmer, are we Islamophobic if we question these verses? It says it in the Quran, you know? And, you know, it's weird because I can say that because I come from Iran, I'm Persian, I'm Middle East, and maybe I can question Islam. But if someone like you,
I said it.
You're a white man. If you question Islam, you'll probably go straight to jail.
I might be locked up. And this is the chilling thing about the Lucy Connolly sentence. And I think you've raised a really important point, Eunice. Do you remember Christopher Hitchens? I think it was back in 2009. The late, great Christopher Hitchens actually predicted this. He actually predicted that we were going to get to a point where Islamophobia would become illegal. And what that means is that we cannot question some very disturbing aspects of this religion. So, for example, me as a gay man, I know for a fact that in lots of mosques in East London, near where I used to live, the young people who were being radicalized in that mosque were told that gay people should be pushed off the top of buildings. That is no exaggeration. That is literally happening. And so that's why I think I look at a sentence like Lucy Connolly's with horror, because yes, she expressed her feelings on the day of the Southport Massacre terribly and artfully. But I'm a free speech absolutist, and I think if we can't criticize religion, then we are effectively starting to give in to authoritarianism. I really, really do believe that.
Exactly.
And Lucy Connolly wasn't making a look where it's because she's been done for inciting violence, right? But she wasn't saying, Eunice, go down to this address and blow up this mosque or kill this person. She was making a very inartful explanation about why she's furious about mass immigration into this country. Now, again, I need to stress, because, you know, people don't take nuances with these issues, Eunice. I am not for a single second saying that I agreed with her tweet, that I thought her tweet was appropriate. What I'm saying is she doesn't deserve 2.5 years in prison for it. And it's utterly terrifying for those of us like you, like me, who want to challenge some of these prevailing narratives.
Exactly. And like yourself, Dan, I am a free speech absolutist. And it's not necessarily I'm picking on people. I like to challenge ideas. I don't think there's any idea on the face of the earth that is beyond criticism. You know, nothing.
Big time.
And unfortunately now we have a government where you cannot criticize ideas. And when you cannot criticize ideas, then when you cannot tell the truth, then lies start to take hold in society, where everyone is lying all the time and people have the silent majority and people are scared to say the truth. And that is a sure way for society to go downhill. I've said this before, but there is a saying that says, save your society from three things: war, hunger, and lies. And the woke mind virus leads to lies because people don't have the guts to tell the truth because they're scared they might be called Islamophobic, xenophobic, sexist, racist, you name it. And that's what they do. They use kindness and affection to hide their utterances and their dark sort of control and tyrannical narrative. And they try to pretend to be the good guys. But believe me when I tell you, at no point in history, the people that try to censor you were the good guys. Okay?
Totally.
People that are good, they believe in freedom of speech. They believe in... Because at the end of the day, like, okay, what do we have to lose? We have nothing to lose. Okay, let the truth be out. Let people speak, you know? And if we're right, over time, our arguments should be strong enough to win. So people that try to censor you, deep down, they probably know they don't have a strong enough argument. And by silencing you and by trying to marginalize you, they try to stop you. And, you know, it's a fear mongering, or it's a fear tactic, because now a lot more people are going to see this case and they were like, okay, I'll stop, you know, commenting on illegal immigrants.
I'm not going to criticize the government. Exactly. Okay, so look, let's talk about the political solution, because you talked about Reform UK, you backed them and helped strategize with them during the election campaign. some fascinating figures emerging, Eunice, over the past 24 hours. Look at this headline in the Daily Telegraph.
Yeah.
Voters now more positive about reform than Labour. Some 29% of those surveyed took a positive view of Farage's party compared to 27% for Labour. And then we have Rupert Lowe, one of Reform UK's MPs, predicting that there will be a Reform UK government at the next election. Is it possible? Do you dare to dream, Eunice?
Well, I certainly hope so. However, we have a first past the post system, as you know, and unfortunately, I feel like that rigs the system. Even in the last election, Reform had 4.1 million votes, but only they got 5 seats, which is ridiculous. They should get at least 150 seats, you know, and Conservatives got 6 million and Labour got close to 10 million. So Reform are already halfway there. And, you know, they really got going like a month before the election. So now they have 5 years to build that momentum. But then the problem is that we have a first past the post system in which Reform is probably going to finish either first or second across the country, but then somehow end up losing. I feel like in order for Reform to win, there needs to be a deal with the Conservatives, because the Conservatives are imploding. More and more Conservative voters are leaving the Conservative Party to go and vote for Reform, and I am one of them. But because they are the Conservatives, they're like, okay, we'll wait for Reform to implode. But I don't think Reform will implode. So it's a losing strategy, and I think actually the country is centre-right. The country is not centre-left. However, the vote on the right has now been split into two, between Reform and Conservatives, which gives the advantage to Labour. So in the near future, I don't know what's going to happen, but I feel like the Conservatives need to do some sort of a deal with Reform, or Reform should really go for the jugular and try to beat the Conservatives and take majority of the Conservative votes. I don't know if that will happen, but I hope more and more people wake up and start voting Reform, because the Conservatives are not conservative anymore. That's why I keep telling people they're like a centre or centre-left party. You know, they don't have any new ideas. They're stuck in the past. You know, they're, you know, globalist. I find them a bit corrupt in some aspects. I feel like they don't really career politician. And yeah, I just don't like them anymore.
Well, there's a divide, isn't there, within the Conservative Party? I mean, Zia Yusuf, who is the new chairman of Reform UK, actually posted today on X a comment from Miriam Cates, the former Conservative MP, now working as a presenter on GB News. And she said Reform UK is rapidly professionalising and building infrastructure, and there is no reason to believe that their advances will not be reversed. So she is clearly on the side of the Conservative Party, and I would call this the Robert Jenrick side of the Conservative Party, the Jacob Rees-Mogg side of the Conservative Party, the side of the Conservative Party that I used to be on, which says, actually, we've got to do a deal with Reform. We have to find a way to unite the right. But significantly, you have Michael Gove, the new editor of The Spectator today, backing his protege, Kemi Badenoch. Yesterday, Sarah Vine did the same thing. I think they have an arrogance to believe that they can somehow neutralise the Reform threat. But personally, I think that is naive, which is why I back Jenrick, because what I would like to see is a deal, not necessarily a merge. But there is a world, isn't there, where you could allow Reform UK to focus on the seats where they're second to Labour and take the red wall, and then you could allow a more moderate Conservative Party to fight the Lib Dems and try and retain the blue wall.
Yeah, very true. But then, as you said, they have this arrogance, and they have probably maybe a little bit of corruption, because probably the donors don't want the Conservatives to merge with Reform. But any sane person, any sane political advisor would be advising exactly that, because it's not the Conservatives, it's not Reform. Reform is just gathering momentum. They're the biggest party on social media. Their posts get more traction than any other party, and they have a very charismatic leader, something that the Conservatives don't, or as a matter of fact, no other party has at this moment in time. So it's in their own self-benefit, in order to save the Conservative Party, to do a sort of a deal, or maybe a merge or whatever. But at this rate, the Conservatives will be destroyed in the next 2 or 3 years. And I think this whole leadership battle is a distraction, because I don't think neither Badenoch or Jenrick are good enough to lead the party. I was more of a Jenrick guy at first, but then I've seen more and more videos from Badenoch, and I kind of like her. But at the end of the day, I just think like there are different sides to the
Yeah,
same coin. Nothing much will change. If you want real change,
it's partly an
vote
irrelevant
reform.
conversation.
Yeah.
There has been a fascinating scandal, though, today, Eunice, in the race for the Conservative Party leadership that I want to discuss with you. There's a Tory MP, you may have heard of him. I actually love this guy. He's called Christopher Chope. He's a contrarian. He refuses to go with whatever the prevailing argument is. And I like that. We need people like him who are going to question the narrative. And where Christopher Chope gained my respect forever is that he was one of the only MPs who questioned the vaccine rollout and who was there for the vaccine injured. When I was part of Mark Stein's vaccine injury special on GB News, the victims of the vax, who was the only MP in the audience, Eunice? It was Christopher Chope. But today, the mainstream media are hysterically rounding on him because of an interview he's given with ITV. And let me set this up. So he is asked about whether he's going for Badenoch or Jenrick, and he's a supporter of Robert Jenrick. And he says that one of the reasons is because that Kemi Badenoch is too focused on her family. Now, the background to this is that Badenoch literally went on holiday earlier this year when there were hustings going on. So he's trying to say, I think, that she's a bit lazy. But obviously, it's been blown up into a massive sexism storm. So now that I've set it up, let's have a look at what he had to say. And Eunice, I'll get you to react off the bat.
I myself am supporting Robert Jenrick because I think he's brought more energy and commitment to the campaign, and being leader of the opposition is a really demanding job. And much as I like Kemi, I think she's preoccupied with her own children, quite understandably. But I think Robert's children are a bit older, and I think that it's important that whoever leads the opposition has got an immense amount of time and energy.
Sorry, Christopher, can I just clarify that? You're saying that a woman shouldn't be standing to be leader of a political party because she's got young kids?
I'm not saying that at all. I was one of Margaret Thatcher's strongest and staunchest supporters.
What's giving you that concern, though?
Well, what gives me the concern is because I understand from talking to colleagues that Kemi spends a lot of time with her family, which I don't resent at all. But the consequence of it is that you can't spend all your time with your family as at the same time being leader of the opposition.
Eunice, are you mortally offended?
No, I'm not, because he makes a valid point, whether we like it or not. Women tend to burden most of the reproductive responsibilities, and that's just nature's call. It's not my call or your call. It's women are the ones that have to get pregnant, and usually the infants and younger kids are more attached to their mothers rather than their fathers. However, as I was saying earlier, I don't really trust Jenrick. I am starting to lean more towards Badenoch because of her policies. I've seen some more recent videos of her. I actually like the fact that she says the things that she says, and she's a black woman, because you would think she would play identity politics. But that's why I like the right more than the left, because people on the right don't like to play identity politics. However, he makes a valid point, but at the end of the day, personally, I don't care. I feel like if she's strong enough to be able to stand in competition, then she's strong enough to lead the party.
Thank you so much for watching Dan Wootton Outspoken. Please click on my face just to the bottom left to subscribe to this brand new independent news source and turn on the notification bell so you'll be alerted to our brand new live shows, uncancelled interviews, and special royal episodes. Outspoken is also now available as a podcast, so you can listen to the show every weekday on the go, wherever you are.